I hope this recording is done on the cloud, or should I do it on my computer?
Oh, cloud.
All right. So welcome everybody. I hope you had a good week, and I saw all the photo submissions that everybody sent in, and I want to thank you for participating. And I saw many good pictures, and I was very glad with the pictures that were submitted. And I went through all of them. Some of you did not submit your pictures. Most of you did, and some of you really clicked your very interesting pictures, and I was very happy with the pictures that you submitted. Um, I'm not going to be showing all the photos here, but I will show some of the photos in this. So these three pictures, I'm not saying these are the best or these are my favorite, but I like these three pictures for a reason, and I'll explain the reason why. The first picture, I liked it a lot, mainly because it has a lot of, it has contrast. If you can see, it was taken on a phone, I believe, and you can see there's a lot of green, but there's only one red thing in the center, and it grabs your attention. The first thing you look at the photo is at that, and by using colors, the photographer has done a very good job of drawing attention to the subject. So when we are taking pictures in the real world and we come across uh, situations where we want to draw attention to something, we can make use of colors. And by using those colors, we can draw attention to where we want the viewer to look at. The second picture in the middle is, I like it a lot, not because of any color or anything like that, but it just conveys, you could say it conveys a feeling, conveys a mood of what the cat feels like. And another thing that I like is that the person who took the picture did not just take the picture standing up, pointing down at the cat, but rather he went down to the eye level of the cat and took the pictures. When photographing animals, especially pets at home, dogs or cats, it is very easy to just like stand and take a top-down view of the dog or cat doing whatever they may be doing. But pictures tend to come out in a more personal level. They look better when you go down to their level, eye level, and try to take their picture. So perspective is very important. So when taking pictures of cats or dogs, or even children, I would recommend to go down to their eye level and take the picture that way. The third picture that I liked very much is because of the use of both light as well as shadows. I'm sure all of us know what silhouettes are, and here is a good example of a silhouette where we have the subject. Subject is what we're taking the picture of. The subject here is this person here who's taking a picture of the sky, but the subject is, there's no light on the subject. So photography is not just about using light, but it is also using shadows to convey the message. It is also about using darkness, not just light. It's about how you shape the light or how you play with these elements. So we can see that the sky is nice. There's a beautiful sunset behind, and this person is silhouette like a just a black shadow. But because of the correct angle that they took the picture in, we are able to see what he's doing. That is pointing his phone in the sky and taking a picture. So thank you for submitting your photos. I will be looking at. I actually went through all your photos that were submitted, and I liked almost so many that I couldn't include them all. So I had to force myself to pick these three just to bring out a small lesson. And I will be doing this in future classes as well. All right. So this week we are going to be studying something that is very, very important that I feel every photographer should know, whether you'll be taking pictures on your phone or on a camera, whether you're a beginner or even a professional. This is something that if you can understand the concept of, you will be able to um, you will be able to use the gear that you have properly. This has a lot to do with settings, the camera settings, and by adjusting the settings, it affects. Uh, I would say about 90% of how the picture turns out to be. A lot of times we take pictures on our phones and we let the phones do most of the work for us. And or sometimes we use our cameras and we keep it in automatic mode and we let the automatic mode do the work for us. But what happens when you do that is you're not able to control how you want the picture to be seen. So today we're going to be talking about something that is a little more detailed. And at any point, if any of you have any doubts, I want you to stop me and ask me to repeat or to explain it in a different way so that you will understand. Uh, it's called exposure. Exposure is how much light is allowed to enter the camera and fall on the sensor. So you can see here a picture and it's labeled underexposed, currently exposed, and overexposed. As you can see in the side where there's an overexposure, we see on the right side here that the sky is too bright. You're not able to see any details. You can't really make out the clouds, and the sunset is just, you can barely see it. The water is also just a lot of white. You're not able to see much over here. These pictures are called overexposed because the photographer allowed too much light into the camera. And by doing so, he lost details. Here in the center is something called correctly exposed. I will cover that after I explain what is underexposed. Underexposed is when the photographer did not allow enough light to fall on the sensor. So the pictures are underexposed, meaning there's less light. So here, underexposed pictures are darker, and we can see the clouds. Yes, we can see the sunset behind, but we are losing details in the darker areas of the picture. It's just black. So when you look at the shadows or the shadowy area here, you're losing details. So it's just dark and black. Overexposed, you're losing details where it's very bright. Underexposed, you're losing details where it's dark. But in the correctly exposed area, you will see that there's a balance between the bright areas and the dark areas. There is good level of details. You're able to make out stuff. I'm sorry if you're watching this on your phone, but if you're watching this on your computer, you'll be able to see that you're able to tell there is some detail in the rocks over here, and the sky, you're able to see the clouds, you're able to see the sky. It's not too bright. So that is what the correctly exposed picture is. Now, why is it important to get a good exposure? Uh, of course, there are times when you would choose to actually underexpose or overexpose it based on how you want to convey your photo. Sometimes you want it to be this way. If you want to get this look, then fine. But that is how exposure is usually categorized as underexposed, correctly exposed, and overexposed. Exposure is, again, I'm repeating, how much light you allow to fall on your sensor. That is basically what photography is. Letting the light, digital photography is when you let light to fall on your sensor, and that is, the sensor records that light, and that's how a picture is taken. So now we know that exposure is the light falling on the sensor. This is the exposure triangle. There's going to be a few photography terminology. So I would recommend that you take notes or pay careful attention to these terms so that you understand and remember these things. This is the exposure triangle, and it has three sides and three elements to it. So each of these contribute to the light and to the exposure of the picture. Again, I hope everyone is clear with what exposure means. That only when you're clear with that can I proceed with the exposure triangle. If any of you have a doubt in what exposure is, I want you to raise your hand right away. You have your options here to raise your hand like this on your phone or on your computer. If you have any doubt, please raise your hand. Okay, I see that Felina Graceland has a doubt. Please unmute yourself and you can ask. Or do you just want me to repeat?
Yeah, I just wanted to repeat it once more because I couldn't understand the part,
Okay.
the previous slide.
Okay, thank you. So exposure is how much light you are allowing to fall on your sensor. So when you take a picture, you are having a camera sensor that records what light is coming at it. And you can think of it as, let's say, the eyes of your, let's say you're using your phone. So your camera is the eyes of your phone. So if you're keeping your eyes wide open, you're letting a lot of light inside and you're able to see around you very clearly. And if you keep your eyes very shut, then you're letting less light in. Uh, it's not literal, but it's how I'm trying to explain. When you have too much light coming in, that's also not good. And when you have too little less light coming in, that's also not good. So when you have a balance of the right amount of light coming into the camera, then you get a correctly exposed picture. So when you take a picture, you're actually taking an exposure. So you're exposing your, or you're allowing your sensor to get light into it. When you're not using the sensor is covered, or you're on a phone, when you're not using the sensor, the phone usually doesn't send electrical signal through. That's another part. It's a little more detailed to explain. But an exposure is when, how do I put it? An exposure is when you allow, it's basically how much light you let in, how much light you're allowing the camera to see. All right, I hope that helped. Exposure is how much light you're allowing your camera to see. Okay. Did that answer the question actually? We'll have to excuse the dogs barking in the background. All right. I'll cover this again. I'll come and explain a little bit again. Exposure is how much light you're allowing your camera to see. Sometimes you can control how much light by externally adding lights, like you can have lights in your room and stuff like that. But within your camera, when you adjust the settings, you can control how much light you're letting your camera to see. So, and I'll explain more. Perhaps when you understand this triangle, you will get what I mean. So the exposure triangle has three sides to it. All right. So there's shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. These three affect the brightness and the darkness of your image. By adjusting any one of these, you can individually adjust how bright or dark the picture is. It is about finding the balance between the three of these is when you get the right exposure for your picture. Let me explain in more detail. So I will explain each of them first, and then you will get a rough idea. The shutter speed is the length of time that the camera's shutter is open. So when you're taking a picture, I showed you a video the other day of camera shutter opening and closing. Very quickly, I'll play that video for you again so that you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, I hope you're able to see the screen now. So in a digital camera, a modern day DSLR, when you click a picture, what happens is the mirror goes up, and this thing over here is called the shutter. This shutter is what is keeping your sensor from getting light all the time. It only allows your sensor to get the light when you're taking the picture. So when you click a picture, the shutter comes down, and the sensor is for a moment exposed to what is being shown, to what light is coming at the camera, and whatever light the sensor sees is recorded as a picture. And when the picture is taken, the shutter closes again. All right. So now this whole thing that we saw now, it says a clip of about 15 seconds, is actually slowed down 100 times. When you click a picture, sometimes these things can take place at high speeds. Let's say it can take place at 1,000th of a second, or sometimes 100th of a second. Sometimes you can be even slower. Sometimes when you adjust your camera settings, you can keep it open for 30 seconds or so. But what's important to remember is that the shutter is allowing the sensor to see light. So how long the shutter moves or allows is what is called shutter speed. So when your shutter is open for a long time, more light is allowed to come into the sensor. And when it's allowed to open only for a short time, then less light enters the sensor. And shutter speed is measured in seconds and in fractions of seconds. So you've seen here, I've put a small illustration here. So if you're, let's say you're taking a picture with a shutter speed of 30 seconds, what that does is it allows a lot of light to come inside and the picture is brighter. But let's say you're taking a picture very quickly at 1/4000th of a second, then the picture is dark and it's less light is allowed inside, so it's dark. I'll give you another example of what shutter speed does. So when you're taking a picture and you're taking at a very fast shutter speed, so let's say you're taking a shutter speed, okay, for example, keep in mind that when you have a fraction over here, this is very quick and this is very slow. So 1/4000th of a second is faster than 1/50th of a second, and it'll go in that progression. So the faster you take a picture, the less movement you see in your picture. When you take a picture very quickly, it'll freeze what is happening in the picture. But if you keep a slow shutter speed, then you will see movement in your picture, and it's called motion blur. You will see a lot of movement and blur in the picture. Sometimes people prefer to have that for a specific reason, and I will show why that is so. Here you can see a picture, identical locations, but taken with two different shutter speeds. Usually, pictures are taken at around 160 or 300, 400, 500 of a second. Okay, 1/500th of a second, or around that time. Even your phones, when you take a picture, they take at that speed. So when you do that, you're able to freeze motion. If you're looking at this on a computer, you'll be able to see the droplets of water here on the rain, and you can see everything is crisp and detailed. Here on the right side is a picture that was taken for 4 seconds, meaning the shutter was open for 4 seconds, letting light come in continuously for 4 seconds. So as the waves were coming in, the light was coming in, then the waves moved in, the camera kept recording that as well, and moved more in, then the camera kept recording that as well. So that way, as the waves came and went back, the camera kept recording everything, and when it produced a picture, you get this smooth, dreamy look. So this is a very popular aspect in photography with landscapes, or it can be at nighttime when they take pictures. When do you choose a fast shutter speed? It is when you want to freeze action. For example, taking a picture of someone running or some activity that you want to freeze. In that case, if the shutter speed is too slow, then you will get a very blurry picture. You may have noticed in the evenings or nighttime, even when you're taking pictures on your phone, and let's say you're taking a picture of something and your phone shakes, or the person that you're taking a picture of moves, then they become blurry. That is because the camera was shooting at a slow shutter speed in order to compensate for the light. When you take fast shutter speed photos, you're able to freeze action like this. You can see all the droplets are here, and you're able to see everything in detail because this was taken at a fast shutter speed. Uh, Fast shutter speed is also preferred when taking pictures of people and animals, so that movement does not make the person look blurry, or everything, the details are preserved. When you choose a slow shutter speed, you get pictures like these. Slow shutter speeds are preferred at low light situations, so like nighttime, when you go to the city side and you want to get pictures of these light trails from the cars, headlights and tail lights, or from architectural structures or from the fair, then you can show motion through having slow shutter speed. Uh, Slow shutter speed, I'm sure you would have all seen pictures of more examples of slow shutter speeds. However, this what I'm teaching today is good to know because I know that most of you take pictures on your phones. So what I want to do is I still want to prepare you so that when you get your hands on a camera in some time in the future, you'll be able to understand. So I hope you're able to understand what it means to take a picture with fast shutter speed and slow shutter speed. Fast shutter speed is basically taking a picture very quickly, and slow shutter speed is taking it over a long period of time and letting all the light come in. And when you let the light come in, there's a long trail usually from wherever the light has moved. So let's say I'm having a light source with me over here. If you can see my video, let's say I'm having a light source over here. Let's say I'm holding a torchlight over here. And then I open my shutter and then I move this light source to the bottom here. And then I close my shutter. So until I move from top to the bottom, the shutter was open. Then what you would get is a line coming from here to here, a line of light. So you would see the line there, and that is because of the slow shutter speed. But if I was taking a fast shutter speed, like a very quick picture, even if I moved very quickly here, it will take the picture at that exact moment when my hand is there, and it will look as though my hand is just frozen there. You will not see any movement there. But when I take at a slow shutter speed, you will see the light trail come from there, like a line you will see of light from there to here. So you can see in the PowerPoint here, these city lights over here, especially on the roads, these vehicles were initially at one point over here when they started clicking the picture, and the camera was letting all light in till the vehicle got far away, and then the light trail is there. Someone's talking, someone has a doubt? All right. I get that this can be a little confusing, so I'm actually expecting you to have some doubts. So please ask. Do not feel shy. We've all been here for 3-4 meetings now, so there's no reason to feel shy. You can ask your question if you have any question.
I want to ask.
Yes.
So actually, which one the result will be better? The shutter with the more timing or the short one?
All right. So that depends on your situation. So let's say you are in bright daylight. You go out in the morning or in the afternoon. In that case, you have plenty of light around you. So you don't have to worry about how much light you're getting. So you can take a very fast shutter speed. So in that case, let's say you're out with your pet and then your dog is running across and then you take a picture. And because it was fast shutter speed, you'll be able to see a dog clearly. Same thing if it was at night. And then when the dog is running across with a slow shutter speed, then the dog will be blurry. You will not be able to see. But let's say you're taking pictures at night. Now, nighttime, there is less light around us because obviously there's no light from our environment, from the sun also. So we are relying on man-made light, so there's less light around us. So in those situations, we are required to let the camera to we let the shutter to be open for longer so that more light can come in. Otherwise, the picture will be very dark. So I can actually show an example. Okay, I'm not able to find it, but yes, I will definitely show an example next time. So when you're taking pictures at night, there's less light, so the pictures will be very dark. So how do you get details? How are you able to make out what you are seeing? We do that by keeping a slow shutter speed in your camera. So when you let us when you let your camera to have more time to get all the light into the sensor, then you're able to get a brighter picture. But while you're getting a brighter picture, you're also getting lines like this on your picture. So I think it'll be best if I were to demonstrate it. So I will make a short clip and I'll upload it on Google Classroom so that you're able to see exactly what I mean. I'll do that tonight and upload it by tomorrow so that you're able to understand and chew on it throughout the week, and you can ask me your questions after you've seen that videos on shutter speed. I feel like showing a few pictures may not completely explain everything. So a video will be better when I shoot live and show a video, like a video demonstrations. I'll do that. I'll definitely do that.
Thank
So
you.
depending on a situation, you will have to choose between a fast shutter speed and a slow shutter speed. Depends on whether you have enough light or whether you want to intentionally create lines like these of the light trails, whether you want to intentionally create like this or whether you want to freeze the action like this over here. So it's up to you to, it's based on what you are taking a picture of. Another thing to keep in mind is when you are taking pictures with slow shutter speed or a slow picture, then it is recommended that you keep your camera on a tripod. Sometimes, not sometimes, but our hands are always shaky and we may think we are being extremely still, but only when the picture comes out, you will see that even small minute movements in our hands can cause a picture to be shaky. So I'm sure all of us would have seen what happens, let's say when there's very dark. Perhaps you can try it tonight. You can take a picture out of your house, like pointing outside if it's dark. And while you click the picture, you move your phone. So you move from left to right. In fact, someone submitted a picture like that earlier for the assignment of last week, where they move the phone and you can see the light trail there. So tonight, when it gets dark at your place, I would recommend that you point your phone outside, and as you click a picture, move your phone. So move your phone and click the picture, then you will see movement in your picture. That is what it means to have light trails and motion blur in your picture. The second part of
the entire picture will move.
Yes, by entire picture will move. So let's say now you are looking at me and I am here to one side, okay, and then let's imagine this is all in slow motion, okay. So I am here when I start clicking the picture, and before the picture can finish clicking, I move to this side over here. Then what you will see is that there is a blur. You will see me here also, and like a slow blur all the way till here. So you will see a blur of me everywhere. So the picture moving, like when I say the picture moves, it's the picture doesn't move, but the subject or what you're taking a picture of will have moved, will not be in the same place. Again, I think it will be best if I show a video. So I will go and record myself outside tonight and I'll show it to you so that you get a better idea. But I want you all to try that tonight. So if you are by a window and you look out, you can see the city side or anywhere that's dark. You can point your phone outside, and as you take a picture, you try moving your phone and you will see the light align. You will see lines in the light. And if you are, and then tomorrow morning, someone's unmuted, so yes. So, and then when you look at pictures taken during the daytime with plenty of light, you will not see so much of a shake. It's because there's plenty of light. So your camera automatically goes to a fast shutter speed. So everything is crisp and clean. Um, it depends on what photo you're taking, whether you want a slow shutter speed or not, based on how much light you have to get the correct exposure, to not be underexposed or overexposed. For example, over here, if they had taken this with a fast shutter speed, it'll be too dark. You'll not be able to see anything. You'll only see certain bright areas. But because you kept slow shutter speed, you're able to see there are plants here, there's the street lights, the roads, the buildings, and everything around. All right. The second side of the exposure triangle is called the aperture. The aperture has to do with more of with the lens than it is to do with the camera body. I hope you all remember from what we learned last week that the camera has two parts, the camera body and the camera lens. Now the lens is what lets the light into the camera, and it allows the light to fall on the sensor. So the lens can actually control how much light is being allowed inside. Pretty much any lens that you get nowadays are adjustable, and they allow you to adjust how much light you're allowing inside. So they do this by having blades on the inside that open and close. So when they close, they are like this on the right side, and they allow less light to come inside. And when they open, they are like this on the left side, and they allow more light to come inside. So despite what a shutter speed may be, you can also adjust the brightness of your picture through aperture. Like I mentioned earlier, your picture's brightness is controlled by three things: aperture, ISO, and shutter speed. And each of these three things can control the brightness of your picture. And it's about finding a balance between these three that will help you to get the picture that you're trying to take. Aperture is measured in f-stops. You may have seen whenever a new phone releases, they're like, oh, this phone has a f1.8 or f1.7 or f2 lens. What it means is in relation to the size of the sensor, the lens allows a certain amount of light. But in basic terms, the bigger the hole that the lens has to allow light inside, the more light comes inside, and the number is smaller. All right, it goes in reverse. So when I say f16, it's a big number. The hole is actually smaller. But when I say f2 or f4 or f1.4, the smaller the number, then that means more light is being allowed inside. Okay, this has to do with the lens only, not with the camera body. So you can buy different lenses for different f-stops. So when you buy a normal camera, you may get a camera with a lens f4 or f5.6, f8, and this lenses can go up to f16 or f22 like that. So that's not a problem. All right, but if you want to go to f2.8 or f2 or f1.4, then those lenses are much more expensive. So as you allow more and more light to come in, the better the pictures are. So professionals tend to use these things, and then they cost more as well. So that's how it is. The bigger the opening inside the lens, the more light comes inside. So the picture is able to be, the picture you get is brighter. And when you make the lens to close down, then less light is being allowed inside, and the picture is darker. I've shown that graph, but I think it will be interesting if you see the actual lens itself. So I will show that as well. Here you can see that this lens is able to go from f1.8 up to f22. The lens itself is not attached to a camera. All these adjustments is solely in the lens itself. So when it's f1.8, you're able to see that the hole or the opening is bigger. when it's f2.8, the opening gets smaller, f4 it's smaller, and by the time you come to f22, it's very small. This whole thing is blocked, and there's a very small opening allowing the light to come in. So naturally, at f22, you will get a darker picture, and at f1.8, you will get a brighter picture. Now, again, choosing at what f-stop you want to take the picture at is up to you, based on how much light you have available. If it's a very bright day and you still choose to shoot at f1.8, then the picture is going to be very bright unless you adjust the other settings. So that is what an aperture of the lens looks like.
Excuse me.
Yes.
If it's like the afternoon time,
Okay.
and I want to take a picture, so what will be the proper setting for me to use?
Okay. Usually, even if it's afternoon, the light can vary it can be different based on whether it is sunny, whether it is cloudy, whether it's raining, whether you're inside the house or whether you're outside. So you'll have to look at your situation. Let's say you are inside your house. Typically inside the house, it's darker than outside. And then in that cases, you'll have to have more light to fall in this camera sensor, right? So you will probably use a slower shutter speed, or you may use a bigger aperture. Or if you're outside and it's very bright, let's say you are outside and there's no clouds in the sky, it's just sunlight in abundance, then you can take a faster shutter speed to allow only little light to come inside. And perhaps you can go to, let's say, f5.6 or f8. So the opening is small, so less light is allowed inside. And when you allow less light to come inside, then the picture is not too bright. Again, if you go to extremes like f16 or f22, then it'll be darker. So based on what situation you are in, what's the level of brightness where you are at, you will have to choose accordingly. All right. Again, if you remember in the first class, my number one tip, I would say, is to go outside and experiment. I did not learn all of this online. Actually, I taught myself what all these things were way before I even saw them online. They seemed very boring online, so I didn't want to see when I was initially starting out in photography. So I would borrow a friend's camera. Actually, I didn't have a camera back then. And then I would go and then I would experiment. I would change each setting one by one, and I would see what it does. And then by doing that, I was able to gain an understanding of what each individual setting does. By keeping everything else the same and changing only one, you're able to see exactly what that setting does. So that's how you experiment and that's how you learn. So don't worry, it's not like photography something you learn in a month or in 2 months, 3 months. It's a process, and you will discover newer things as time goes on, and it'll be a fun process as you discover. So keep experimenting and try taking pictures every time, whether you have a phone or a camera. Most phones nowadays come with a pro mode in your camera built in. So that is why I'm teaching all of this, because a lot of this is actually being implemented in phones themselves. So that is why it is good to know all this, because you can use this actually within your phone's pro mode. For example, I will screen share now from my phone so that you can see. iPhones have these as well as Android. So it's not specific to any one company. It just depends on the phone that you have. If it's relatively more recent, then in that case, it will have a pro mode. Roland, can you make my other device as co-host as well? So I can share screen.
Yeah, sure.
So this is how the phone is usually. It's automatically choosing the best settings for you. And that is how you are able to get this picture. You can click this picture. But when you go to, let's say, your right side, or usually sometimes it's under more, then you will find more advanced settings. And when you go to the left side, I've set my pro mode to be here because I use it often. Um, you can see a lot of things in the bottom here that are very similar to what I just explained. You would remember I said ISO, and you can see that as I adjust my ISO, the picture is getting brighter. And as it gets lower, it's getting darker. Same thing with this over here. This icon here is what I just explained previously called shutter speed. Shutter speed, as you can see, my phone allows me to go up to 1/12,000th of a second. It's not a literal physical shutter, so that's why it's able to do this. Most modern DSLRs can go up to 1/4000, or if you're a pro DSLR, they can go up to 1/8000. But let's say you are at 1/350th, it's still dark. You can see it's very dark now. And since I'm in a low light environment now, my room, I've turned my light down. So it's a low light environment. So in this case, you can actually make the shutter speed slower. And when you do that, the picture turns out to be very bright. Okay, actually, instead of uploading a video later, I will show you right now what it is like. I will get you a simple subject. All right, let's just say I have a small Vaseline thing over here. All right, so you can see here that the picture is dark, and by making the shutter speed faster, it gets even darker, and making the shutter speed slow, it gets bright. Now you can see if I'm making it very slow, and if I'm keeping the thing open, for, like my shutter open for very long, it's too bright, and it's not, you're losing details. You're not able to see what exactly is happening here. But when I have the right shutter speed, I'm trying to find a balance between these. And then when I find the right balance of shutter speed, then I'm able to get decent exposure. Now this, I'm adjusting the shutter speed here, but I can also adjust the ISO here to get some brightness. And I can also, if I was using a digital camera here, then I can use the aperture to get more light into my camera to get a brighter picture. But most phones nowadays do not have a detachable lens. All the lenses are built in. Good question, Twinkle. So the aperture in my device, it cannot be controlled. Phones come with a fixed aperture, except for a few Samsung phones that released a few years ago when they were experimenting, where you can change aperture between two numbers. But 99% of phones nowadays, even iPhone 11, iPhone 12, 12 Pro, they all come with fixed aperture. That's because your phone's lens cannot be removed or changed. So it's a fixed aperture lens. So if you look at your phone at the back, you will notice when you click a picture, nothing moves inside. There's no movable parts inside your phone's camera, unless you have, let's say, a Samsung Note 10 or S10 series, I believe. But that's, again, a very specific audience. Anyways, so on my phone or on your phones, you will not be able to control the aperture. That's because, again, like I mentioned, it's a fixed aperture. So you can only adjust two things for the sake of exposure. That is your ISO and shutter speed. So when my shutter speed is very fast, okay, you will notice there's a flickering in the background. All right. I have a small tube light here mounted for my computer table, and that tube light is flickering at a speed that our human eyes cannot see. But when I go to a very slow shutter speed, my camera is actually having a shutter speed that is faster than the light. That's why you're seeing the flickering in the background. This happens not just with phones, it happens with professional DSLR cameras as well. So that's just a side note to understand. So you can have control over 2 of these settings on your phone generally. And some phones will allow you to have manual focus or autofocus based on how you want to focus it. So on my phone, I can adjust the focus by moving the slider, and you can see it allows me to control where the focus is. And apart from that, the main 2 things that I wanted to show were shutter speed and ISO. So when a phone or a camera is having a very high shutter speed, let's say I'll just reduce my ISO now to bring it a little down. Now, when I click a picture here, what's happening? It means that my phone is clicking a picture. You can see on the right side that it's taking a picture, and this whole time the phone is recording whatever light comes into my phone. And you could see that there was plenty of light, and because the phone was letting in so much light all the time, the picture actually turns out to be very bright and very overexposed. This is a classic example of overexposure. Too much light was let, I let my shutter be too slow, so there's so much light coming inside and the picture is too bright. Now, if I'm in the shutter speed and I take a picture very quickly, then, okay, there, see the picture is taken immediately, instantly, another picture. And the picture is just too dark. You're not able to see anything. So here's my speaker, wait, here's overexposed and here is underexposed. But when you adjust your settings properly, you are able to see the right exposure. So let's say I will bring my shutter speed a little slower. I don't want it too slow or you will see shake again. So I will adjust ISO as well. Shutter speed. Now, remember when I said you will see motion when you take a picture? What I meant is, okay, as I will demonstrate now, if you're taking a picture and you're moving your phone, now let's say at this moment, while I am moving my phone, I click the picture, then the picture will be shaky. All right. So let's say I'm moving my phone and I click a picture now. What you will see here is a very shaky picture. This is what I mean by motion blur. Someone asked doubt earlier, will the picture move? No, the picture does not move, but this is how shaky the picture will be. The results will be shaky. So I hope all of you were able to see earlier my example of what shutter speed does. I hope you were able to see the shaky picture. You were able to see as I increased the shutter speed, I made it a very fast shutter speed, then it was very dark. And as I went to a slower shutter speed, it was very bright. All right, I am feeling hot right now. Phew. Okay, aperture. Aperture is something that you find on your cameras, but cannot be controlled on your phones. All right, I hope that part is clear. Your phones have fixed aperture, but it's still good to know so that when you talk about camera stuff, when you're planning to buy a camera or when you're going to use a camera, you will at least have an idea of what it does. The most important part of adjusting your aperture, of course, is letting light inside, but there's another fun part to it, that is adjusting how much blur you get in the background. All right, so let's say you have the same lens, but like I showed earlier, one lens, but different apertures, right? It was closing down within the lens itself. So at f1.8, you're able to get very good background blur all around you or all around the subject. And when you go to f22 or like at a higher f number, then there's less blur around you and more stuff are kept in focus. Of course, you would say the main argument would be, oh, this looks so much better, it looks so much more professional. But everything has its use case. For example, let's say you're taking a picture of a rose or a close-up of something like that, a flower, or your pet, or your children, or let's say family. Then you want to have the black background all blurred and it looks more professional. Then you can have it at a f1.8 kind of thing. Okay, but let's say you are taking picture of, let's say you go on a vacation somewhere. Of course, not possible right now, but let's say you go on a vacation someplace, and when you're there, you take a picture of yourself near some historic building or near a park somewhere. You don't want everything to be blurred out, do you? You want to show the people where you are. In that case, you cannot stick to using f1.8 and blurring everything out. You want to show some of the background as well. So in those situations, you adjust how your aperture is. Here's another example. With the same lens, when you open your lens up to a bigger f-stop, so f2.8, you are able to get like a lot of blur, like a lot of background blur. So the background is completely blurred, and you're able to draw the viewer's attention to where you want their attention to be on this cap here. But if you close down the same lens, you adjust the aperture of the lens to f16, let's say. So there's a very small gap, so there's less light. Also, you will get a lot more things in focus compared to this. As you can see, you're able to see what's in the background and you're able to see more details. So aperture is what affects your background blur, and by using aperture, you can draw attention to certain objects or what you want to show. Here's another example, same lens, same shutter speed. You can see here 1/30th of a second, 1/30th of a second, but here it's f1.8 and here it's f4.5. So f1.8 naturally, as you can remember here, is on this side of the chart. Okay, it's opening up more, so it's brighter. Okay, this picture is brighter, but on the right side, you're able to see f4.5. It's letting less light compared to 1.8, so it's darker. So that is what aperture does. It affects two things, the brightness as well as the blur. We use blur to draw attention to something. So let's say you're taking pictures of people, or let's say you're taking pictures at a wedding, or just taking pictures with your friends. In those situations, you can use blur so that the person looking at the picture will focus on where the attention is, where you want their attention to be. You are controlling where their attention is. So they are not looking at what's happening around. It gives an ambience. You're able to see that it's a forest kind of setting, but the main attention is drawn to this person here because they are in focus and the rest of the area is blurred. Phones nowadays are able to do that through portrait mode. So on your iPad and on my phone, I have a portrait mode. So I am able to use that portrait mode to fake having aperture. Like I mentioned, your aperture does not change on your phone or an iPad. But using portrait mode, what it does is it will try to using artificial intelligence, the software itself will detect what your subject is, and it will blur the background for you. Now, since this is a software feature, it can be a hit or a miss sometimes, and it is not always 100% accurate. So that's why sometimes you'll notice people who have, let's say, curly hair, or people who have glasses. You will notice that sometimes when you use portrait modes on your phones on them, it will actually not be 100% perfect all around them. But technology has come so far nowadays. So using portrait mode, you can still get some amazing pictures, like you can see the ones here. And the last part of your exposure triangle is the ISO. The first was shutter speed, second was aperture, and the third is ISO. Now the shutter speed and aperture, you can put them in whatever position you want, that does not matter. But personally, from experience, I would recommend that you will not adjust your ISO until you've adjusted the other two. And this should be your last option at getting light into your camera. All right. Why is that? That is because ISO is how sensitive the camera is to light. But what it does is when you make a camera too sensitive or when you go to a high ISO, then it makes your picture grainy. All right. I will explain what I mean by grainy later. I'll show another example. But as you can see here, the lower the ISO, the darker the picture, and the brighter the ISO, the brighter the picture. All right. So after adjusting your shutter speed and your aperture, if your picture is still coming dark, in that case, you can adjust your ISO to get your camera to get a brighter picture. All right, but your ISO should be your last option. I will show a few more examples and then we'll be done. I understand we went a little over time today, but you will see here ISO 100. Some cameras go up to ISO 50. They are darker, and the lower the ISO, the less noise you will have. And then the higher the ISO, more noise, but you also get a brighter picture. So when you're indoors, let's say you're in a dark place and then you take a picture. And then when you try to zoom in your picture, you will notice a lot of dots, a lot of small white dots. You will notice, we call that grain. So that is what I mean by noise. You can see here an example, what I mean by grain. If you're using your phone, I would recommend you to keep your phone sideways and try to zoom in a little bit. You can see that the picture on the left with the lower ISO has a nice candle flame here. You can see the base, the top of the candle, and the black around it is very clean. There's not much of grain there. But if you see over here, they increase the ISO to a very high amount, and you can see that there's a lot of dot everywhere. It's not actual dots. It's like it's a fake dots. We call this grain. All right, grain, or it's also called as noise. Okay, it's not the sound noise, but this is the picture noise. So by doing this, sometimes you will get some people like that look. They like to have grain. It has a artistic look sometimes, so they do that. But I would recommend for a clean picture to first adjust your shutter speed and aperture, and then as a last resort, adjust your ISO. The lower the ISO, the cleaner your picture will be. So you can keep ISO as low as possible. When you're outside, when it's afternoon and there's a lot of light, in those situations, your phones automatically come to a lower ISO. And if you're taking pictures with a camera, I would recommend that you lower your ISO as well. And by doing that, you're able to get a cleaner picture. All right, homework. Enough of exposure triangle. Too complicated, right? Sometimes it can be a little complicated, but it will take time to understand. So I hope you bear with me and don't think that it is complicated, but it's okay. I will ask all of you to turn your videos on again. We are done with the exposure part for now. Okay. Homework for this week will be to take a few close-up pictures. All right. I want you to focus on the picture let me screen share so that you understand exactly what I mean by focus. All right, I hope you can see my screen now. Opening up the camera, you can go to your phone's normal auto mode. It does not need to be in the pro mode. Here is a USB that I have over here. All right. When you're taking a picture of something, I want you to tap on the object so that your phone focuses on it. Sometimes it's possible that when your phone is too close to it, it may not be able to focus. In that case, you can move your phone a little back, and then at a certain distance, you can try tapping again. And when you do that, your phone will focus, and then you can click a picture. All right. I want all of you to find something at your house and or outside, or let's say you have a garden. Then you can find some object or maybe something that has small details to it, and then you can, yes, you can use macro mode. You can tap, get focus. When it's in focus, you can click the picture. All right. So that's your assignment for this week. It's to focus something and then click a picture. All right. So
If you take a photo
yes.
of a particular person, or
Hmm.
if you take a selfie on our own, wouldn't it focus on its own?
Yes, it will. Phones nowadays are very smart, so they will. You will. That's why you will see when you're pointing your phone at someone, you will see sometimes a box around their face. So that means the phone is already recognizing, oh, that's a person. Then it will focus on that person. How many pictures? Okay, a picture like this, close up, I want one picture. All right. But make sure it is clear. So make sure that you're focusing right. All right. Second picture. All right. I want you all to, when you tap one time, you will see a box. Okay. If you have your iPad or your another phone alongside you, I would recommend that you follow along. You will notice that when you press and hold, you will see a small icon over here. This adjusts your phone's exposure. All right. This adjusts your phone's exposure automatically. It's not like you having to go through Pro mode and all that. So it'll adjust the shutter speed and ISO everything automatically. What I want you to do is to take another subject, okay, another thing that you're taking a picture of, and then tap on that so you get focus. And when you have focus of that, I want you to press and hold, and then I want you to underexpose it intentionally, and then take a picture, and then overexpose it intentionally and take another picture. All right. So right now you can see my phone is automatically adjusting the exposure so that everything is not too bright or not too dark. But when I intentionally press and hold, I'm able to overexpose or underexpose. This you can use based on circumstances, but I want you to intentionally underexpose and overexpose your photos for the sake of your assignment. So that's what assignment will be for this week. First picture is to be a close-up. Make sure you focus on the small object. It could be a flower or something small like a pen drive, or you could be food. I saw some amazing pictures of food this week. Made me feel very hungry. And even though I'm vegetarian this year, some food was very tempting. And I encourage you to try taking pictures of food. And food can have really good details close up. So you can try that. And you can try flowers. You can try anything at home. Sometimes you can have a textbook and then you can try to focus on the sentences in the text. So yes, macro mode is allowed. Anything that allows you to get close to your subject and focus, that's allowed. So that is your first picture. Second picture can be anything, but I want you to intentionally underexpose it. And no, yes, it'll be posted on the Google Classroom. But what I meant to say is, I do not want you to take a normal picture and then edit it to make it dark or make it bright. I want you to click it dark or bright, okay? Do not edit a picture to make it dark or bright, but rather click it that way, all right? Some of you are very good at editing. I've seen the pictures and I really like it. But for the sake of understanding exposure, I want you to not edit your pictures this time, especially the ones of you underexposing and overexposing. And since you are going to be going close up and taking, you will get the blur as well. So you will not really have a need for editing so much. But if you still feel like you want to adjust a few things like the color saturation or contrast a little bit, that's okay. But yes, close up, underexposed, and overexposed. These are the 3 pictures that you'll be posting this week. I will not ask questions now because I know we already went 20 minutes over time, and I'm very sorry about that. I will post a short quiz on Google Classroom, and it'll take at most 5 minutes. So you can answer the quiz, and you can submit the quiz on Google Classroom itself, and I will create that later. So please do that this week, and I hope to see you all get good marks, and we will meet again next week.